Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Roy Chazut. I'm the head of marketing of iRiver. And you've joined us today to How to Slice Your CDN Cost webinar. I guess that most of you who are joining us today suffer from this problem. But we'll try to answer and discuss about this question and how to solve this huge pain with our very special guests that I will presenting them in a few moments. So the reason that we actually get into start to think why to do a webinar about this topic, because the majority of our clients are coming to us and share their concerns about how to solve those issues. It's probably one of the most communicated topics at the moment. And we definitely find some creative ways to deal with these issues. If you are clients which have large volumes of traffic, I guess that you related to this, the spend on the CDN costs can reach even to hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And this is what we're coming to solve today. So before we start, some few insights for your inspiration. Before a year ago, an NPAW, which is a big player in the multi-CDN industry, has started to run surveys with 282 responded leaders from the video streaming industry, and it seems very realistic that 43% of the industry are facing to keep the cost low. Those industry are characterized by the large volumes of traffic. We're going to speak about it today in terms of how to leverage that, and don't see it as a con, but more a pro, and how to solve this issue. The second thing is that in our last webinar before a month ago, 35% of the attendees are pointed that they are going to use CDN migration in order to optimize their cost. It's kind of a myth that we're going to discuss here today as well. Is it actually work? Is it beneficial? So this is like a few points about our topic. So before we speak about how this session is going to work, let me present you the guys that are going to join me today. We have here today Edward Sinovoy, the CEO at iRiver and the co-founder. And next to him, Limor Sinai, an ex-global director at Akamai. Thank you guys to join us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. How's it going to work? So we have a full session of questions that we've collected from the candidates, people that actually decided to join this webinar. And I would like to face those questions to you and let you answer them. So the first question, I will decide to point it to Limor. Limor, what are the parameters that affects our client's CDN bill? How you see that?
Yeah, great question. So I think it's very important to look at the components of costs and how it's driven. So there are really three main components of what drives your price on the CDN. One is the delivery and how much traffic you have, right? It's sometimes measuring bytes, it's measuring bits. It looks at the geo distribution, but how much traffic are you driving? The second layer of cost is going to be what are the added services or products that you have on that very basic CDN layer, which is there's the very basic component of delivering the traffic. The second layer is around the additional products. Are you using the security products, WAF, spot management, DDoS, etc.? Are you using any kind of image optimization products or video optimization? Those tend to have additional fees. And then I think the latest wave that you see in the CDN world is really the edge compute. So that's another added layer that the CDN providers will typically add as well. So number one is the delivery. Number two is the added services. And then Number three that drives the cost is really how much are you willing to commit? I think this is very standard in the industry. The more you commit, the less the price per unit. The CDN vendors all want your traffic, and they're competing for it. And if you're willing to commit more upfront, you're going to get a discount. So those are the three drivers of the cost to your business from my experience.
Okay, thank you. I think that to allow our audience here to get a little bit of understanding, like if we break down the CDN bill, is also mean like what are the factors that impact on the cost. Eddie, I would like to ask you like what the factors which affect the CDN market pricing at the moment, and if the current trend in the market is going up or is it going down?
So actually, Roy, from my perspective, there are several trends in the market. From one side, like Limor mentioned, the amount of traffic is constantly growing. So we see year over year a growing amount of traffic of around 30% around the world, and it's not including years like a COVID year or this year with the generative AI. From other side, the price per unit price is going down. It's constantly going down, and in my assumption will continue to constantly going down. And these two trends kind of, if you combine them together, you're getting the number of how much money or how much investment the companies are doing on their CDN or delivery services. And this trend is constantly going up, but it goes slowly up compared to the amount of traffic, which is rapidly growing in the market. I assume that we'll continue to see during the years, and especially after with the generative AI, we'll see more and more traffic in the world. The prices will continue to go down for unit price, but the aggregated cost for the online services will continue to grow up and maybe even grow up more aggressive than what we saw in the previous years. On top of that, like Limor mentioned, there is also all the application services that coming on top of the delivery. The edge become much more complicated compared to what it was a few years ago. There are much more use cases that happened on the edge and much more services that the edge platforms, former CDNs, provided to the end users. And we will see this transition continue. We'll see more and more use cases, more and more services consumed on the edge. And as a result of that, the expenses for these services, of course, will continue to grow parallel to the growth of the delivery of the traffic.
Thank you for that. Limor, from your experience, how do customers deal with the challenge of CDN cost, of reduced CDN cost?
Yeah. So I think various customers deploy different strategies in order to address it. I think first and foremost, you'll see a look at the commits, right? Like there's always an incentive put in place, especially at renewal time, where if you increase your commit, you can lower your price per unit and kind of control your spend. That's always a strategy. I think in general, you have to look at your contract and see what are you spending on? Like, are there services that you're spending money on and they're not getting utilized? So first and foremost, look at what you're spending on and your commits at the different levels, and are you really doing anything? So that's strategy number one. Strategy number two is shop yourself around, and we see it all the time. It's a race to the bottom between the vendors. The vendors are very motivated to give you a discount. So migrating from one vendor to another vendor is certainly an element that we see, especially for price. And then the third layer, which used to be reserved for the most sophisticated accounts, was really adopting a multi-CDN strategy, right? If you really have a lot of traffic, you can split it across CDNs and drive down the cost that way. That way you're keeping all vendors at bay and constantly competing with each other for the majority of the traffic. So those are the three ways I've primarily seen around.
Super interesting. Thank you for that. Another question to you, Limor. Does you think that actually, does migration actually solve the pricing issue?
So I think if you're moving from one vendor to another, you've got to watch out because the vendors are incented to give you that discounted price. Like everyone is looking for new customers and, there are only so many to go around. So you're constantly stealing from each other and price is one way, obviously, to move from one to the next. So you're going to get a very heavy discount going into it. But the question remains okay, what's going to happen at renewal? That, those costs are going to inch up. When you think about migration, there is also the technical investment that needs to be poured in. So you've got to also assess that cost. So I think, moving from one vendor to another and then from another vendor to another, just because of cost, usually in the long term doesn't pan out because you're either investing, either the cost is going to increase over time or you're spending it on the technical lift to move from one to the other.
Yeah. So actually, I agree that migration is definitely allow you to reduce the prices. Think about it like employee. When employee is passing from one job to another job, it's allowed to upgrade for him the salary in many cases. So same thing when you are moving from one vendor to another vendor and the cost, this is what is important for you. It's allow you to reduce this cost, but it's coming also with a significant effort and complexity from investment perspective to move from one vendor to another. Additional to the effort, also there is a significant risk involved there. And then the question is whether you really can do this effort and take these risks year after year. You probably want as a company to focus also on other areas and not only migrate from one CDN to another in order to keep your cost reasonable. This is at least my opinion.
Okay, thank you for that. Another question to Limor. We see that there are many organizations that shift from a single to multi-CDN infrastructure to reduce costs. You mentioned that earlier. Is it an effective approach? And how much an average organization can save with this multi-CDN strategy?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, it goes a decade back. When you look at the sophisticated customers, if you look a decade back, the sophisticated customers really went to the multi-CDN approach. And at the time, if you can build that technical, if you can build your technical stack in the way where you can shift traffic from one to the other very easily, that allows you to really get the best price. And also keep everyone on their toes. It was a very, very hard thing to do, but over the years, you saw that multi-CDN adoption kind of like going uphill. More and more vendors are taking that multi-CDN approach in order to control their price and to lower their price. The only challenge that you have in there is that you can't commit, how do you manage your commits, right? Because really where the price is lower, it's lower when you're committing more traffic. But if you want to have that flexibility to move traffic around, you can't really commit to each vendor a lot. And if you're committing, then you're not really leveraging your ability to multi-CDN effectively. So, but we have seen, that the ones that do drive that that do drive the multi-CDN can save up to 40% of their CDN costs just by the mere fact of the ability to trade off.
Actually, Limor, I agree with you. We heard it also when we started our journey with iRiver. We heard this kind of conflict between the volume that you want to commit as much as you can from one side, but from other side, if you split the traffic, then your commitment going down and your price is going up. Yeah. And in iRiver, we succeeded to resolve this kind of question and the problem. And our customers with iRiver that split the traffic using iRiver actually enjoy from lower prices, in spite of the fact that their volume in each one of the vendors is kind of going down.
Good answer. Eddie, someone asked us, some CDN providers offer a volume commitment, requires a dedication to a specific amount of volume for a specific price. per gigabyte for X amount of year. From your perspective, what are the ups and downs of commitment and who should use this approach?
So like Limor mentioned, I think commitments are important. In this business, commitments allow you to reduce the prices. So if you are consuming a significant enough of traffic, you probably want to commit in order to reduce your unit price and reduce your total cost for the edge. You should be careful not to do overcommit, because when you commit, sometimes you're trying to get the best possible price from your CDN. And I saw many customers that we meet with them and we asking them for their commitments, and they're saying, listen, we committed to significantly higher amount of volume than what we really consume. So yes, they succeeded to get a relatively good price probably as a result of this commit, but they cannot consume all the buckets, all the traffic that they actually acquired. So we should be, as a customer, should be very careful when we commit, and always try to commit to less what we really need. And we should take into account that our needs might change. We might continue to grow in the same amount of traffic, and we might slow down a bit. We don't want to overcommit, because in the overcommit we simply, leave the money on the table.
So your recommendation is to keep some buffer and doesn't just push it to the limit.
Yes, this is what I would require. Definitely commit, but be careful not to overcommit.
Okay. Limor, do you have maybe a different opinion on that?
I think sometimes, the commitment is for a longer time. So it really is important that it's attractive for you, right? So it's a long-term commitment. So it's important that it's at an attractive price.
Okay. Another question to you, Adi. If I'm using a public cloud like AWS, GCP, or Azure, Microsoft, will it make more sense to use their CDN or to use external CDN from a cost perspective?
So, I think it's a great question, and finally, at least from my perspective, the answer is based on the source of the data that the end users are getting. In case that you have, your traffic is very cacheable traffic, so you have a cache hit ratio of 99.9%. It means that the significant portion of your traffic actually served from the edge, from the CDNs. In this case, there is no any significant advantage to use the CDNs of the public clouds like CloudFront in AWS or Google Cloud in GCP and things like that. But in case that the traffic is not well cacheable, it's less than 99%, let's say 95%, even 90%, or dynamic traffic. In these cases, for the CDNs of the public cloud has significant advantage, because in these cases, DTO is starting to play a role. DTO this is the data transfer out. When you're putting a global CDN or a standalone CDN in front of your cloud, you will pay for the data transfer out that go from the cloud to the CDN. If this data transfer out is 0.01%, it's nothing. It doesn't play a role. But when it's come, to 5, 10%, this cost becomes significant. And when you are calculating your delivery cost, you should take into account not only the cost of the CDN itself, but you should take into account also the DTO of the cloud. Because when you are using the CDNs of the cloud itself, you don't pay for this DTO. So the CloudFront price actually including inside also the price of the DTO. And in many cases, what we see in the customer's field is that the right thing is to use both of them. There are advantages to standalone CDNs from cost perspective. There are advantages to the cloud CDNs for some portions of traffic. And also it's important to mention that from functionality perspective, the standalone CDNs are richer in the functionality. There are cases that you want more advanced functionalities for some portion of traffic. In these cases, you can use more a standalone CDN, more advanced CDN from functionality perspective. For static content that locates, let's say, in S3 bucket, definitely the CloudFront or equivalent GCP, Google CDN, Azure CDN will do the work, and it will be much more cost efficient for you.
Okay, thank you for that. One last question to you, Eddie, before we finish. Does CDN configuration have any affection on cost? In case there is an affection, what would you will recommend in order to improve it?
So first of all, yes, before you're starting, before you go to migrate from your CDN to another CDN, it's definitely better to try and optimize your configuration. The configuration on the CDN has significant impact on your cost, the cost of the CDN and also the cost of your region. First of all, think about your TTLs. Browser TTLs will prevent unnecessary requests and traffic which will reach the CDNs themselves. And by that you could reduce the amount of traffic. It means less payment for the CDNs, less cost for you. Then it's important to manage your cache, efficiently on the CDN. If you are, and here, the question is how you define what is your cache key, what is your identification of a unique object of your cache. This definition is critical. If you are including inside the ID of your object in the cache temporary information like a date or any other temporary data, it practically make your cache almost useless, because in most of the cases or in many cases will be unnecessary cache miss, and the CDN will need to bring your traffic from the origin. You will have more hits on the origin, more DTO, more cost from your perspective. Additionally, it's important also to mention that on the CDNs there are solutions like Origin Shield, which allow you to improve the offloading, improve the efficiency of the CDN, and reduce the amount of traffic that will go to origin. These services in many cases can improve cost, but in some cases wrong usage of these services are increasing the cost, because if your traffic is dynamic, it might increase your cost. You will have additional heat, and many CDNs are charging for midres and for the heats that the Origin Shields are getting. So there are many configurations, many options on the CDNs that you definitely can and should tune before you are migrating to the other CDN, adopting multi-CDN, or doing anything else. Is there, optimize it to reduce your cost.
Thank you. You don't go in anywhere. We still have a Q&A session. We're going to stop for 90 seconds and explain how iRiver is going to help you solve those cost issues, problems. And for that, I'm going to share the screen so you can see the platform. For those who are not really know what iRiver is, so iRiver is a multi-CDN as a service platform that allow you to manage and build your multi-CDN infrastructure and manage all your CDN provider under one single roof. So let's speak about one of the things that we can solve with this platform. So as you already know, some CDN providers offers you better prices in one region, and when others provide an expensive rates in this specific region, and vice versa. To solve this problem, iRiver developed a feature which allows you to manage your cost or to steering your traffic to the most cost-effective CDN provider. So how it works, you basically click on add a policy, select both of the CDN providers which are operating under this account. We will choose here traffic switching type, which is coast-based. And let's choose, for example, the geolocation that we know that for this specific, we have one CDN provider that offer much better prices. And for that, we're going to put France. Great. So here we have also an option to add a performance penalty. That means that in case that you don't want to sacrifice your performance over cost, you can put, for example, 10% gap. So in case that your CDN that offer a better pricing provide a 10% degradation in the performance, it's going to be fall back to your second CDN. So here in the prioritization, we're going to choose Fastly, which offers the better pricing, just for example. And in case that Fastly will not provide the performance that we are looking for, it will fail over to CloudFront. So this is one of the features that we offer. The second ones that we have is the ability to take into account your commitment. So let's say, for example, that we have 3 CDNs. In that case, you can see CloudFront, Fastly, and Cloudflare. And let's say, for example, that we want to add a commitment usage to Fastly. So what you need to do is to click on the 3 dots menu, click on Update Commitment, and let's just add to it a 6 petabyte. Now, if I will refresh my screen, you can see there is a graph added here. On the top, you can see the red line. The red line is basically the limit where your commitment ends. And here, because we are now looking, we still didn't use our commitment. We see the blue line. As long as we keep utilizing our commitment, this blue line will raising up. And now, if we will go back to services and try to add a new traffic policy, what you're going to see is that we have here 3 CDN providers components. The first one, which is above the line, it's basically our commitment CDN provider, which means that by default, the traffic will route to this CDN in order to utilize the commitment and don't have any spares. In case there is of performance consideration, the best of the 2 of the CDNs below the line will serve the traffic and handle the user would send a request. So this is about iRiver and how we can help you solve some of your CDN of your cost of your CDN expenses. And let's move back to the Q&A session. So, okay, so we have 2 questions that I would like to share with you. And the first one, which I would like to start with, is a question that we received in the chat. And one of our guys is asking is, we have noticed that more occurrences of CDN provider taking advantage when they recognize that clients are locked into their services and refuse to negotiate pricing. What would you recommend to people watching us to avoid or mitigate vendors lock-in? Limor, would you like to answer that question?
I think a multi-CDN approach really it provides you the flexibility, and honestly, obviously, iRiver does that for you pretty seamlessly. I think that's exactly it, right? The vendor lock-in, you know, they have an incentive to keep you on. So a multi-CDN approach allows you to detach from that.
Okay.
To add there?
And sorry, again?
I was wondering if Edward has anything to add.
I agree. I think lock-in, it's a problem. It's a problem that customers are facing in. and sometimes there is no choice. Sometimes you decide strategically, okay, I locked in, I will stay with this vendor, I'm building with him a partnership, long-term partnership, and I will not move from this vendor. It's good for, at least for, it might be good for a short period, for short term. It's definitely become a challenge in the midterm and long term. So in the short term, if you need to do something very quick and you need to deliver something tomorrow, definitely locked in is a compromise that you can consider. For midterm and long term, it's a pain point, it's a challenge. It will be very difficult for you to reduce the prices when you are locked in. There is no any motivation. The vendors understand exactly what do you use and how complicated it will be for you to move out to another vendor, and therefore they will never reduce the prices for you.
I'll just add there, the renewal date matters, right? Like, I think with vendor lock-in, at the end of the day, there's a renewal date, whether it's 2 years out, 3 years out, 1 year out, half a year out, and you've got to manage to that renewal date from your perspective. Because if you're going to do anything, look at that renewal date, work backwards, 6 months, 8 months, 3 months, and figure out what you're going to do when that renewal comes.
Yeah, that's great. One last question is, so what are the basic condition which I should, as a company, prepare myself to enable a price negotiation?
So I think it's like Limor said, a renewal date is important. You should be the option, at least the option to do the move. If you are even for your, for your existing vendor that you can, that it's really feasible, that you can do the move and move to another CDN, it definitely will allow you to negotiate your prices even with the existing vendor. If you don't have any ability to do this move, and the vendor know that you don't have any ability to move this move, your negotiation will be much more complicated, and I would try to avoid it. So I would, like Limor mentioned, I would try to manage the renewal date. Before the renewal date, I will try at least to put a realistic plan that allow you to move to another CDN and share this information with the vendor in order to get his attention and willing to reduce the prices that he can.
So thank you guys for answering all those great questions. I wish that it's helping to our audience here to understand a little bit more about how to optimize their cost. I wish to thanks to all the guys that joined us today for this session. And that's all. See you in the next session. Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to host you anymore. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.